I'll read through the modified Brown Act requirements here, so we're perfectly legal, and not that we haven't heard it already today. In compliance with the California Executive Orders AB 361, members of the Board of Directors and members of the public will participate in this meeting in person and by teleconference. Those attending by teleconference and call-in information of the Board of Directors and the public is as follows. I'm not going to go through the website number. Any member of the public on the telephone may speak during the public comments or may email public comments to the administration at sutterbuttesfloodcontrol.org, and comments will be read from each member of the public. During this period, modified Brown Act requirements, Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency will use the best efforts to swiftly resolve requests for reasonable modifications or accommodations for individuals with disabilities consistent with the American Disabilities Act. That's for Chris Smettle. And resolving any doubt whatsoever in favor of accessibility. I'll call the meeting to order. Tara, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Charlie Hoppin.
Yes.
Mike Morris. Yes. Matt Conant.
Yes.
Matt, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Salute. Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any members of the public here that would like to comment, or do you have anybody on the line, Tara? No. The consent calendar. We can either take this apart or vote on it in one hunk. The approval, we have the approval of the minutes of the March 9th meeting and continuing Brown Act resolution, which I feel like we're going to do for the rest of our lives. Does anybody?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. Presentation, discussion, and action items. Michael, are you going to take care of the assessment district?
I'm going to have Seth Wurzel take care of that.
All right.
Thank you, Chair Hoppin, members of the board. So this is a pretty pivotal moment in terms of the assessment district formation process. What I'm going to walk the board through today are the two resolutions that staff is recommending that the board approve that start the assessment district formation process. Those two actions in front of you today are a resolution of intention and a Proposition 218 procedures resolution. The resolution of intention proposes the formation of an assessment district to fund operations and maintenance. It does these three basic things, and I'll go through them in more detail, but establish the boundaries of the assessment district, preliminarily approves the engineer's report, and directs the noticing and public hearing and Proposition 218 balloting process proceeding to take place. The Proposition 218 procedures resolution follows on that and establishes the process of the ballot proceeding that we're about to undertake. And as part of that, it approves the notice and the form of the notices and ballots that will be mailed out. So I'll start off with the resolution of intention. As we went through the last two board meetings, we started out with a presentation of the areas that benefit from the assessment district. So we talked a little bit about that in detail. But in summary, essentially, this resolution of intention will approve a boundary map diagram that's shown here on the screen. It includes all properties that receive special benefit from O&M services, and it's based on the extent of flooding from levee failures, as we discussed. In the event that O&M services were not provided, and all of the benefiting properties are located within the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority boundaries. So essentially, the boundary of the JPA is the assessment district boundary. The resolution of intention then preliminary approves the engineer's report. So at our last board meeting, Mike and his team did a walkthrough of the engineer's report and described all the details of it, but it identifies. It has these sections in it which identify the authority for the assessment district formation. It describes the proposed services and the plans and specifications for operations, maintenance, repair, replacement, and rehabilitation activities that are to be funded by the assessment. and it defines that methodology for assessing special benefit and apportioning the costs of the services in proportion to that special benefit. Also includes an estimate of the cost to provide the services, establishes the assessment role, and then it also includes a copy of the diagram of the boundary that the resolution approves as a first part. And then the resolution of intention, the third thing it does is it calls for a public hearing and a ballot proceeding. It calls for the mailing of a notice of the public hearing, which would take place on June 22nd at 2 p.m. here at this location. And then the process for that mailing of that notice and that ballot, the plan for the team is to mail the ballot packages by May 6th. It lays out that the requirement that the ballots be returned by the close of the public hearing, and the ballots will be tabulated after the public hearing with the intent of announcing those ballot results a week later on June 30th. If there are a majority of the weighted votes in proportion to the assessments are in favor of the assessment district, then the board at that point in time can move forward with forming the assessment district. The content of the notice and everything is designed to comply with the requirements of Prop 218. All the necessary information is laid out in that notice, and that's part of the topic of the next resolution. The second resolution that we're asking the board to consider today is that procedures resolution. There are a few extra things we added into that, and I wanted to highlight those for the board. That resolution would establish a relationship between the existing funding that's already being collected and the proposed assessments. So as it relates to the Feather River West Levy Financing Authority's assessment, would only commence when when MA3 is annexed into LD1 and all of the existing assessments of LD1 and MA3 are no longer levied. So as we've talked about in the past, the intent here is to supplant those three assessments that are there, the two existing assessments, the LD1 levies and the MA3 assessment that the state levies. The intent here is to supplant those assessments with this proposed assessment. And so the board could move forward with this assessment process, but we wouldn't start levying the assessments until the MA3 annexation takes place, and that MA3 assessment would no longer be collected.
Seth, with the MA3 assessment where it varies from year to year, how do you pinpoint what value you're going to put on it?
So I should have mentioned this at the start of the meeting. We do have the team here from HDR. I'll go ahead and try to address that. But if ask Mike if there's anything you have to add, if you can come up and please supplement that, I'd appreciate it. But the budget that for the MA3 assessment was developed and reviewed by LD1, is developed by LD1's engineer and reviewed by LD1 by that board. That's the budget that we're utilizing for setting the assessment for the Feather River West Levy Financing Authority. So it's based on what it would take LD1 to do that work. So it's not necessarily what the state's levying based on their budget, but it's what based on the LD1's engineer has reviewed those facilities and determined what it would take for LD1 to complete that work. That's what's built into the budget for FRWLFA.
But if we're going to assimilate their assessment, wouldn't it have to be, I mean, wouldn't they have to agree with the amount, or I'm not sure how the transfer works there.
The intent is for this assessment to fund the work that LD1 would do to maintain the MA3 reach of levy. And so that's what the budget is based on. I guess the question of whether or not how that would compare to what folks in MA3 are currently paying based on the state's activities, I guess that's an evaluation that those property owners need to evaluate as they review the assessment and the proposal in front of them. Generally, I think what we've demonstrated is that the assessments would be lower as a result. The second point with respect to the relationship between the existing funding and the proposed assessment, we make it clear in the resolution that LD9's existing funding, which comes from a share of ad valorem property taxes levied by Sutter County, would remain. This is not going to supplant that revenue stream. That revenue stream would remain in place after the formation of this assessment district. The other item that is addressed in the procedures resolution is the use of funding for operations, maintenance, repair, replacement, rehabilitation. The resolution makes it clear that the assessment should be apportioned to fund those services in accordance with the approved budget documented in the engineer's report, or as approved later by FRWLFA Levy District 1 and the LD9 boards. And so the intent there is to ensure that there is it's made clear in the resolution that this money would be apportioned to LD1 and LD9 as they agree on in the future. Okay. The Prop 218 procedures resolution then details the process for complying with the mailed notice and ballot proceeding requirements of Proposition 218, Article 13D in the Constitution, and the government code, the underlying authority, which is the Benefit Assessment Act of 1982, and the Proposition 218 Implementation Act. So attached to the resolution is the form of mailed notice, a posted notice, and a ballot. And the process for mailing and posting those ballots is laid out. So we're making it absolutely clear what we're going to mail out to people, and how we're going to accept those return ballots. They're going to be either mailed in, they can be hand delivered to LD1's office, or hand delivered at the scheduled meetings that we've laid out. You can't scan your ballot and return it by email. That we're not going to accept a ballot that way. You can't fold it up and just hand it to Drew as you see him at the grocery store. That's not going to work for us tabulating ballots. So we lay that out very clearly in the resolution. We make it clear that only the original ballots that we mail out or provide as replacements are the only valid ballots. You can't make a copy of it and turn in the copy because you want to keep your original. You have to sign and seal it in the actual security envelope that we provide. It's got to be clearly marked yes or no. You can't, mark both and it can't be marred or defaced or torn in half because there's a portion of it that you want to keep later. We want the whole ballot back in the sealed envelope. And then we also lay out in this resolution the process for tabulation. The tabulation will take place by our assessment engineer, by Wildan Financial Services. It'll take place in public view. And again, we clarify that it's weighted in the proportion of the financial obligation. I want to go ahead and summarize the remaining process. So the mailed ballot proceeding is a minimum 45 days before the public hearing. So that time period between May 6th and June 22nd is that 45-day period. Only benefiting property owners will vote. Again, a weighted vote, and it's based on your assessment, which is a function of, as it's described in the engineer's report, your depth of flooding, your property type, what type of land use you are, and how big your parcel is, and how big any structures are on your parcel. Again, that engineer's report describes the detailed basis of the assessment. Again, if the assessment will pass if its weighted votes outweigh the weighted no votes, and we have to have the ballots in by the close of the public hearing, so folks can hold on to their ballots all the way until you bang the gavel at the close of that public hearing. If it's approved by property owners, the assessment may be adopted by the board after the tabulation, and the earliest that the levy would commence is fiscal year 23-24. So this summarizes the schedule. I believe the board's seen this before, but again, we are sitting here at the April 20th board meeting right in the middle of this schedule. We have, again, we intend to mail the notices on May 6th. We have a community meeting scheduled for May 10th. And then the public hearing, the balloting would close on the 22nd, and the goal is to announce the results, giving the engineer a week to tabulate the ballots. So we intend to have a special meeting on June 22nd and a special meeting on June 30th at this location. This also summarizes those same items. We do have, I left out May 11th at 2 p.m. So we have a regular board meeting next month. The intent is to have that meeting and allow, if the public, after we mail ballots and notices, has interest in attending that meeting, we'd make ourselves available to answer questions at that time, but that would be at 2 p.m. The FRWLFA board meeting, special board meeting on 6/22 would be at 2 p.m. and we would announce the results on June 30th. There's also, we are going to continue ongoing outreach activities through social media. Those would continue through June, and also targeted stakeholder outreach meetings will continue to take place by the team as notices are mailed out. There's an additional postcard mailer. We completed a mailing last week. A newsletter was mailed out to folks. Another postcard mailer will be mailed out on the 27th in advance of the notices and ballots being mailed on May 6th. So within those outreach materials, we're making ourselves available through a hotline, through email, and through the website. The website also includes an assessment calculator where folks can go and determine what their assessments are in advance of receiving the ballots or checking, and once they receive their ballot, they can go and understand what information goes into calculating their assessments through the assessment calculator. The key points in terms of that are being conveyed through the outreach process: property owners are deciding what's going to happen with respect to maintenance going forward. There's going to be a cost either way, regardless of what they vote. Either they vote for the assessment and they know exactly what their costs are going to be. If they don't vote for an assessment, then the state takes over maintenance and they don't know what their assessment's going to be. There is a cost either way. So the vote determines whether it's imposed by the state and it's uncertain, or whether or not they constrain their costs to what they vote for. The team's put together an outreach video. I wanted to go ahead and play that video for the board now so you can see what's going to be made available to the public.
27 miles of West Feather River levees in Sutter County provide flood protection to approximately 25,000 properties in Live Oak, Yuba City, and unincorporated Sutter County. Major repairs were recently completed on this 27-mile levee reach as part of the overall 42-mile project, but ongoing operations and maintenance are needed to continue to reduce flood risk and to meet strict state and federal requirements. These updated requirements have led to a $1.3 million annual shortfall in funds necessary to pay for levee operations and maintenance. Levee operations and maintenance includes vegetation and rodent control, erosion repairs and road maintenance, operation and cleaning of relief wells, safety inspections, flood fighting during emergencies, and many other tasks that keep our communities safe from flooding. In 2020, Levee Districts 1 and 9, along with Sutter County, formed a joint powers authority called the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority, or FRWLFA, with the agreement to work together on long-term funding for levee operations and maintenance. FRWLFA is now following the California Proposition 218 process, which will ask those 25,000 property owners who benefit from levee protection to vote yes or no on an operations and maintenance assessment. A majority yes vote means an operations and maintenance assessment passes. Levee Districts 1 and 9 maintain control, and operations and maintenance costs and services will be consistent, predictable, and lower over the long term. A majority no vote means the assessment fails, and Levee Districts 1 and 9 will run out of money. Operations and maintenance responsibilities will revert to the state of California, and costs will be passed on to property owners without a vote, and will likely fluctuate unpredictably. Figuring out what your assessment may cost is easy. Go to FRWLFA.org, navigate to the assessment calculator, and enter your address or parcel number. We hope you'll join us at the upcoming in-person community meeting on May 10th to learn more and ask the FRWLFA project team questions about this important flood control vote. Visit FRWLFA.org for more information.
Okay, so that concludes my presentation. If there are questions, the project team's available here to answer any questions regarding the resolutions or regarding the engineer's report or anything else that the board may have.
I've got a couple of comments. I have been very critical about the outreach process, and I felt the mailer that was sent was well done and that it was done in a form that people could understand and explain. I was very glad to see it. Something that I've harped on for a while, and you may have it, but when we have these public meetings, I think it's very important to have a map of the areas that's large enough that people can see it and they can see where the roads are. Because I guarantee you, not everybody knows exactly where the boundary lines. I think that would, really, really be helpful. And I would hope at the public meetings, there's someone that can articulate better than I what an ad valorem tax is. I can dance around the edges of it and probably just confuse somebody, but undoubtedly, somebody from LD9 is going to ask what an ad valorem tax is. And I think we need to be mindful that nobody's going to come to these public meetings because they're happy. So, the more we can be prepared for questions, I think the better off we're going to be. So, but I will retract my rants about the lack of outreach. I thought the mailer was well done.
So just one comment. I looked at the mailers too. It looks good and I like the video. I wish that somehow we would say that, the state never does anything efficiently and at lesser cost. So I wish we'd bring that up.
We have to be a little careful of that though, because we're working with the state on a lot of other projects and it's really the same agency that we'd be throwing mud clods at. So
Matt, actually,
Mud Clod, but
at City Yuba City, it was said it pretty good at the Yuba City meeting. The questions that were asked and everything was well told.
I just think that, generally speaking, the state always costs a little more to do.
no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to have a soft glove on for a change here. And, Mike Anamita, since I've known him, has insisted that the costs we see that are imposed on MA3 aren't fully loaded costs either. So it's hard to say they're not showing the whole thing when we know they're probably not, but I think that's the case.
And Mike and Minnie, I was at the meeting, the Yuba City meeting, as you saw, and I thank you for how you were able to answer the questions that City Council asked you.
Do we need motions on the resolutions you put up?
Yes, so the board would need to take an action. They can do it in,
Or one at a time?
you can do it in one motion, adopting both resolutions and recommendations.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's carry. No, she said we could do it all.
I believe your motion was to approve staff's recommendation.
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay.
On the public meetings, are we gonna, like I said, there aren't gonna be people there because they're happy, so I assume you guys will have your full team there to answer any questions? You'll look forward to that, won't you?
Is that something that you're gonna want us to be at, or should we stay home and hide?
I mean, I'm trying to think back for the public Q&A that we had for
Yeah.
Sabufka. I think we maybe had one or two board members there, but it was a much bigger board. I guess the question is it really just a Q&A for the team, or should we view it as an opportunity for the leadership to be there and answer Q&A? It's more of an optics issue than a legal issue, I think.
I'll be there.
Draw straws.
I'll be there.
No, I'll be there.
Only one of us can be there.
Oh, really?
What, you can attend as a member of the public. I don't believe there would be an issue with the Brown Act there because it's not an agendized meeting.
Is it not gonna be a noticed meeting? It won't be, it'll just be
It won't be agendized.
it's not a noticed Brown Act meeting.
How about the meeting on the 22nd of June? Is that the same thing?
No, that's a special meeting. That's a Brown
Okay.
Act special meeting. I think it's best if just one of you is at the public meeting so that we don't have questions about it.
Also, only one of this group. Only one of this group can be at that meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's why I said I'd volunteer.
Load the other.
Does your team have any questions of us, Mike?
Think carefully. Just kidding.
I don't know if you've had things come in on your hotline that have raised questions, or if people have been using it, or where we are there. People have thought that it was going to be taken care of out of the general fund then if the vote failed. I had thought of, and still considering doing an op-ed, kind of to explain my point of view that would touch on that and, really kind of reiterate as taxpayers, none of us are excited about having new assessments, but this, in my opinion, would be the lesser of two evils. And I would certainly touch on the fact that if we fail, it's just not going to be absorbed into the general fund, that we will personally be assessed. And I think that's an important part to drive home is, like I said, I don't like increased assessments, but at least I realize that it's going to have to come one form or another, and I would much rather have it be this way, so.
It's 7 out of how many people in this area? I like that number. I don't like it, but it's low.
I wish you could say something to the effect that I would rather have local control, local taxing, local representation than to the state. And I don't know if that would even be legal to say that, but.
I think as an individual, I could say it, couldn't I, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that because I know that with Sabufka, we went through a process of advising the board members specifically on information giving versus advocacy. So I want to check on whether an op-ed would be something that would fall more in the camp of providing information of the type that you saw in the video. If it passes, this happens. If it doesn't pass, this is what happens, versus I'm advocating a yes vote and this is why. So I want to.
Would you let me know sooner than later?
I will let you know.
Okay.
Well, and then perhaps we could identify someone else to write an op-ed if it's not one of our board.
A shill,
Someone else to.
straw person.
Anybody else?
That's all I have. Anything else from any of you?
There's one other item on the agenda.
Oh, I guess I'll put my reading glasses on and I'll know that, huh? The services update.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is just our quick update on our budget management. As you can understand and be aware, Seth and I and Andrea are working very closely with the HDR team, and we have been throughout the past few months. Obviously, we track costs very closely. We just wanted to give the board an update on where we're at. Remaining budget as it stands, as of the end of April 18th, is around $236,000. That's in total. So that's tracking all of Sabufka's time, all of our consultants' time, and all of our consultants. So next slide, please. This is for the HDR contract specifically. These costs are through January of this year. You know, we get invoices on a monthly basis, but this is where we've tracked them to date. And right now we're showing task order 2 remaining of about 60% through January. So it's less than that now because there's been a pretty active February and March and into April as we're really launching on the public outreach portion of the effort here. So that's kind of where we stand. Sabufka's assisting as much as possible. We'll participate in some of the outreach where it makes sense. There's certain outreach that we are stepping back from, and we're allowing our consultants and Drew Stresser to take the lead on. I think it's really launching the public outreach, as you noted, Chairman Hoppen. This is the time now. The engineer's report, the draft report is done. All that information is available. And there's been a lot of good targeted outreach over the past few months. So with that said, I'll turn it back to the chair.
To acknowledge that, Drew and Mike, I know those aren't fun meetings that, people get excited about going in and getting their fanny chewed on. So I appreciate the efforts, believe me. It's part of life, but I'm sure it's not a fun part, so. I am going to update my reading glasses one of these days because I was looking at that 60 and I thought we were at $60 there until I could squint and see the percentage point there. It made me feel a little bit better, but my eye doctor has been telling me I need to go in and get a new examination. I think maybe he's right. So if there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.